Beneath the glamour of Golden Age Hollywood, a hidden world of pain, prosthetics, and private battles unfolded. Behind perfect faces and dazzling performances were secrets the studios desperately kept quiet. From amputations to lifelong illnesses, these stars rewrote the rules of survival. This is the shocking truth behind 15 Golden Age icons who overcame secret disabilities and deformities to captivate the world. 1. Harold Lloyd. Audiences remember Harold Lloyd for dangling from skyscraper clocks and delivering slapstick genius with boundless energy. But what they didn't know was that Hollywood's most daring silent star was performing with a secret prosthetic. In 1919, a publicity photo session turned into a life-altering moment when what he believed was a prop bomb exploded in his hand. The blast cost Lloyd his right thumb and index finger, and nearly his career. Determined to hide the injury, Lloyd commissioned a custom glove with prosthetic fingers so convincing that even co-stars remained unaware. Hollywood, obsessed with perfection, rarely tolerated physical impairment. Yet Lloyd refused to disappear. He returned to the screen within a year, performing jaw-dropping stunts with one functional hand. In the iconic 1923 film Safety Last, he clung to a clock high above a city street, his damaged hand hidden in plain sight. The glove became a tightly guarded secret on set. Lloyd's silence wasn't just vanity, it was survival. In an industry where any visible flaw could end a career, he masked his injury with ingenuity and courage. He didn't just preserve his legacy, he transformed pain into spectacle, inspiring future generations of performers to rise above limitations. 2. Montgomery Clift. In the early 1950s, Montgomery Clift was the epitome of screen magnetism. Brooding, elegant, and emotionally raw. Then came the night of May 13th, 1956. After leaving a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's home, Clift crashed his car into a telephone pole. The wreck shattered his nose and jaw, left one side of his face partially paralyzed, and irreparably altered his once perfect features. Elizabeth Taylor rushed to the scene and is said to have pulled Clift's broken teeth from his throat to prevent him from choking. Production on Raintree County halted as studios scrambled. When Clift returned, makeup artists, lighting experts, and directors deployed every trick to mask the difference between pre- and post-accident footage. But audiences noticed, and so did Hollywood. Roles dried up. Clift turned to alcohol and painkillers to numb the agony, physical and emotional. Yet somehow, his performances grew more powerful. In Judgment at Nuremberg, his portrayal of a traumatized witness drew critical acclaim. Critics said the accident stripped away artifice, revealing a deeper, more vulnerable Clift. His damaged face no longer fit the mold of a leading man, but Clift's spirit persisted. He carved out a new path, one defined not by beauty, but by truth. The man behind the tragedy became the actor of a generation. 3. Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton, the great stone face of silent cinema, was famed for his stoic expression and death-defying stunts. But behind that poker face was a fractured neck, literally. In 1924, while filming Sherlock Jr., Keaton was struck by a powerful stream of water that slammed him onto a railroad track. The scene looked routine. The injury did not. He broke his neck and didn't even realize it until years later. Recurring headaches and stiffness plagued him, but he said nothing. In an era when actors were expected to suffer in silence, Keaton's refusal to acknowledge the injury became part of his legend. Some historians believe his expressionless persona was not just comedic style, but pain management. Still, Keaton soldiered on, performing his own stunts, absorbing physical abuse most actors would never dare. According to biographer Rudy Blesch, Keaton never complained, never showed weakness. His silence was both survival and artistry. In a world that idolized invincibility, Keaton became a symbol of quiet endurance. His broken neck never stopped him. It became invisible fuel for a career built on discipline, pain, and unmatched physical mastery. He didn't need words. His body told the story, and what a brutal, beautiful story it was. 4. Jack Elum. Jack Elum's face was unforgettable, especially his left eye, which drifted in its socket, giving him a signature unsettling gaze. That distinctive look came from a childhood accident involving a pencil. The result? A misaligned eye that would have ended most Hollywood ambitions. But Elum was no ordinary actor. In the beginning, he was an accountant, working behind the scenes for studios like Samuel Goldwyn's. But by the late 1940s, Elum made the leap in front of the camera. Instead of hiding his eye, he weaponized it. The very thing that should have disqualified him became his greatest asset. Directors cast him as twitchy outlaws, leering deputies, and unpredictable villains. In High Noon, Once Upon a Time in the West, and Support Your Local Sheriff, Elum's eye stole scenes before he even spoke. It conveyed madness, mystery, and menace with eerie precision. Elum once joked that he couldn't enter a scene without pulling a gun, and his rogue eye was often more threatening than the weapon. In a world fixated on symmetry and charm, he embodied something far more compelling: character. His face, imperfect by Hollywood standards, became an icon. And in that defiant gaze, he redefined what it meant to be screen-worthy. 5. Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi's name is forever tied to Dracula, an immortal figure cloaked in darkness and mystery. But behind the theatrical capes and hypnotic stare was a man racked with chronic pain and addiction. Lugosi suffered from debilitating sciatica and severe back problems, which worsened in the 1940s and drove him to use morphine for relief. Some believe his famously stiff movements in Dracula were not deliberate style, but the result of physical limitations. The iconic cape, too, may have served a practical function, concealing restricted mobility and discomfort during filming. By the 1950s, Lugosi's painkillers had turned into a full-blown addiction. When he voluntarily entered rehab in 1955, he made headlines as one of the first major stars to publicly confront substance dependency. Hollywood recoiled, roles dried up, typecasting and health problems pushed him to the fringes. Yet Lugosi never stopped working. Even in his final years, appearing in low-budget horror films, his presence remained magnetic. He wasn't just acting, he was enduring. In an industry built on illusion, Lugosi's real-life pain leaked through the seams, adding weight to every gesture, every stare. The horror icon was haunted not just by fiction, but by the silent suffering he carried to the grave. 6. Lionel Barrymore. As a member of the legendary Barrymore acting dynasty, Lionel Barrymore was expected to embody classic elegance and authority. And he did, for decades. But by the mid-1930s, Barrymore faced a painful truth. Chronic arthritis, coupled with multiple hip fractures, had left him nearly immobile. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he didn't hide behind the illusion of able-bodied strength. He adapted, and forced Hollywood to adapt with him. After a second hip fracture, Barrymore began using a wheelchair permanently. This wasn't quietly edited out or disguised. Instead, MGM boldly wove his condition into his characters, his iconic role as Doctor. Gillespie in the long-running Dr. Kildare series made wheelchair use a normalized part of the narrative. Later, in It's a Wonderful Life, Barrymore played the vicious Mr. Potter, seated the entire time, his disability unspoken but unmistakable. Directors adjusted sets. Cinematographers focused on his expressive face and commanding voice. Audiences saw only the performance. Behind the scenes, strong medication and leg braces helped him function through the pain. Barrymore rarely discussed his condition. In an era obsessed with perfection, he quietly redefined what a lead actor could look like. Not as a flawless icon, but as a powerful presence, seated, scarred, and still unforgettable. 7. Walter Brennan. Walter Brennan wasn't born with a limp. He earned it, through injury, age, and legend. By the time he starred in The Westerner, Brennan's uneven gait had become part of his screen identity. Some sources claim a hip fracture caused it. Others point to lingering damage from World War I. Whatever its origin, the limp became his signature. Rather than hide the physical quirk, Brennan embraced it. Hollywood soon followed. Directors began crafting roles specifically to highlight his weathered appearance and halting walk. Though he was only in his 40s, Brennan convincingly played wizened old-timers, eccentric coots, and toughened frontier survivors. His voice, gravelly and tremulous, matched the physicality. Together, they created a brand of authenticity that elevated even supporting roles. Brennan won 3 Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor between 1936 and 1940, a feat no other male actor has ever matched. Film scholars argue that his limp symbolized more than just age or injury. It embodied the spirit of men who'd lived hard lives and kept going. In a town that usually polished away every imperfection, Walter Brennan proved that sometimes the flaws were the most compelling part. 8. Victor Mlaglin. Victor Mlaglin's face was a roadmap of every fight, every scar, and every round in the ring. Before he was a film star, Mlaglin was a professional boxer, one who supposedly sparred with Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion, in a 1909 exhibition. Whether the bout was myth or truth, the result was visible: a cauliflower ear, flattened nose, and a face worn like war-torn leather. Unlike other actors who surgically softened their image, Mlaglin kept the scars. He leaned into them. Director John Ford frequently cast him as battle-hardened men in films like The Informer, where his portrayal of a tormented Irish rebel earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1935. Mlaglin's physicality wasn't masked. It was magnified. Ford framed his weathered features in loving close-ups. His imposing build and damaged face were cinematic tools, used to signal strength, sorrow, and resilience. Hollywood wanted clean-cut idols. Mlaglin offered something different: earned grit. He never chased the illusion of beauty. Instead, he became a living monument to survival and authenticity, paving the way for a generation of rough-hewn character actors who followed. 9. Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre didn't have a diagnosis, not officially, but his enormous, protruding eyes and trembling voice sparked constant speculation. Some claimed he suffered from exophthalmos, a condition that causes bulging eyes. Others insisted it was simply genetics. Lorre never clarified. He didn't need to. His look, unnerving and unforgettable, spoke volumes. After stunning German audiences in Fritz Lang's M, Lorre arrived in Hollywood, where his eerie gaze became a commodity. He played criminals, mad scientists, and anxious outsiders in classics like Casablanca, The Maltese Falcon, and Arsenic and Old Lace. Directors didn't just cast around his appearance, they designed entire atmospheres around it. Behind the camera, Lorre reportedly struggled with self-consciousness. The pressure to conform, to be beautiful, gnawed at him. But his performances didn't falter. They deepened. His characters were never villains without cause. They were people cracked open by their own fragility. In a world that worshipped symmetrical perfection, Peter Lorre showed that cinematic power could come from discomfort, from the strange and the sad. His eyes weren't just a trademark, they were windows into Hollywood's hidden truths. 10th, Ernest Borgnine. Ernest Borgnine didn't look like a Hollywood star. Flattened nose, broad face, stocky building, but he had something more important: presence. Years in the Navy, including boxing during wartime service, left him with a face that told a story long before he spoke. And for Borgnine, that nose, battered and unglamorous, became the anchor of his unlikely stardom. He didn't try to hide it. If anything, he joked about it, once saying, "I've got a face that stopped a clock, and then restarted it." In 1955, he starred as the lonely Bronx butcher in Marty. The role won him an Academy Award for Best Actor, shattering the myth that only handsome men could lead. Directors like Delbert Mann saw something raw in him, something American audiences understood: vulnerability, realness, humanity. Borgnine's appearance made him relatable in an era full of polished gods. He reminded people that you didn't have to be perfect to be powerful. You just had to be honest. And for post-war America, he was exactly the face it needed to see. 11. Susan Peters. Susan Peters was on her way to becoming MGM's next leading lady. With delicate beauty and powerful performances, she had earned an Academy Award nomination for Random Harvest and was poised for major stardom. But tragedy struck just 2 years later. On a New Year's Day hunting trip in 1945, a rifle accidentally discharged, severing her spinal cord. Peters was paralyzed from the waist down at just 23. Many assumed her career was over. Hollywood was never kind to actresses with visible disabilities, and MGM quietly dropped her contract. But Peters refused to retreat. In 1946, she returned to the screen in The Sign of the Ram, playing a wheelchair-bound woman. It wasn't a gimmick. The role mirrored her real-life condition, and her performance was lauded for its intensity and authenticity. Behind the scenes, Peters endured depression and physical pain. Yet she continued to work in radio and television, defying expectations in an industry that rarely made space for women like her. Tragically, complications from her condition and reported anorexia led to her early death at 31. Still, her brief return to the screen challenged Hollywood's rigid standards. In a world obsessed with beauty and mobility, Susan Peters redefined courage and left behind a legacy of quiet resistance. 12th, Francho Tone. Francho Tone was best known for his refined good looks and elite screen presence, often playing charming intellectuals or suave romantic leads. But in 1951, during a bitter altercation over actress Barbara Payton, Tone's rival, actor Tom Neal, beat him so savagely that he was left with a broken cheekbone, a shattered nose, and a brain concussion. The incident made tabloid headlines. Photos of Tone's bruised, swollen face appeared across the country. Despite facial reconstructive surgery, his once-perfect features never fully returned to their original state. Hollywood didn't know what to do with him. Leading roles began to vanish. Still, Tone pushed forward. He returned to acting with resilience, taking roles in television and theater. Though his appearance had changed, his voice and poise remained untouched. His later work carried a new depth, less polished, more reflective, and unshaken by ego. Tone never capitalized on the assault for sympathy. He simply carried on. In an era where male actors were expected to be untouchable, his very survival was radical. And through persistence, he proved that elegance wasn't skin deep, it was soul deep. 13th, Lon Chaney Sr. Lon Chaney Sr. was Hollywood's original master of transformation. From the Phantom of the Opera to the Hunchback of Notre Dame, he used homemade prosthetics, makeup, and body contortions to create monstrous, tragic figures. But few knew that his fascination with physical difference came from a deeply personal place. Both of his parents were deaf. As a child of deaf adults, Chaney became fluent in sign language and developed extraordinary nonverbal communication skills. Some scholars believe this upbringing honed his ability to emote through physical performance alone, making him one of the most expressive silent film actors in history. Chaney also suffered from bronchial cancer late in life, which damaged his throat and voice. But he kept acting until near the end, never publicizing his health issues. He believed in the mystery of the performer, the illusion that nothing personal should intrude. Hollywood nicknamed him the Man of 1,000 Faces. But beneath every mask was a man shaped by silence, sickness, and sacrifice. Lon Chaney didn't just play outsiders, he understood them. And in doing so, he gave dignity to the grotesque and humanity to the forgotten. 14. Anne Sheridan. Anne Sheridan was nicknamed the Oomph Girl, a label she disliked but which captured her sultry, magnetic screen persona. Audiences adored her in Angels with Dirty Faces, They Drive by Night, and I Was a Male War Bride. But behind the pin-up, beauty was a woman enduring a secret physical deformity that caused her chronic pain, scoliosis. Sheridan never discussed her spinal curvature publicly, but studio insiders reported that she often required breaks on set due to back pain. Costume designers altered dresses and gowns to hide the unevenness in her posture. Cinematographers learned to angle shots to keep her silhouette symmetrical. She rarely complained. In a studio system that demanded physical perfection, especially from women, Sheridan worked tirelessly to protect her image. But pain was her constant companion. Later in life, as the glamour began to fade and roles became scarcer, Sheridan remained admired not just for her beauty, but her wit, grit, and professionalism. The scoliosis never defined her, but like many of her peers, it remained a secret she bore alone in the shadows of the spotlight. 15. James Stacy. James Stacy's career was rising fast in the 1960s, especially after landing the role of Johnny Madrid Lancer on the hit Western series Lancer. He was rugged, handsome, and poised for long-term stardom. But in 1973, a drunk driver struck Stacy while he was riding his motorcycle. His girlfriend was killed instantly. Stacy survived, but lost his left arm and leg. Most assumed his career was over. Instead, Stacy shocked Hollywood by returning just 2 years later in Posse, playing a character written specifically to accommodate his disability. He didn't hide the amputation. He highlighted it. In 1977, he starred in the TV film Just a Little Inconvenience, about a disabled Vietnam veteran. His performance earned him an Emmy nomination. He continued to act throughout the 80s, proving that charisma didn't require limbs, it required will. Stacy's comeback wasn't just rare, it was revolutionary. He showed the world that actors with physical disabilities could still command the screen. He didn't want pity. He wanted roles. And by claiming them, he changed the way audiences and the industry saw resilience. These 15 stars carried more than scripts and costumes. They carried pain, injury, and shame, often in silence. But in doing so, they changed Hollywood forever. They proved that greatness isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. And sometimes, the most powerful performances come from those with the deepest, hidden scars,